Om Jnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
I'll continue speaking on the great devotees of Sri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu had, while he was personally present, many thousands of followers. Even after his disappearance from the world, there are devotees who by their spiritual influence, it's clear that they're also personal associates of the Lord. Some of the pastimes of some of the most prominent devotees have been recorded. Today I'll speak on a devotee who's considered an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared several centuries before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. That is the famous Jayadeva Gosvami, who is most famous for his Gita Govinda, a poem which describes the intimate loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. So even before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, there were several devotees who wrote poetry which was later to be relished by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Jayadeva, Chandidas, Vidyapati, Bhavabhuti, I believe also, they wrote poetry which was just suitable to be relished by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Without these others I just mentioned, there's not much known. There are several poets by the name of Chandidas who are, so in the course of history, whatever little is known about them has become mixed up. Similarly about Jayadeva Goswami, there is some the exact history is not known, exactly where he appeared in this world, or even in which century he appeared. Traditionally, such information has not been considered very important. What is important is their contribution to the world in terms of their writing, their preaching. This has come to be considered more important in the modern age, where the influence of empiric scholarship, in which they try to prove or disprove various atheistic propositions on the basis of historical evidence or lack of it. Although some, just like it's quite common that a writing, especially a major work like Chaitanya Charitamrita, will be stated where and when it was completed. Anyway, the general opinion about Jayadeva is that he appeared in a village called Kendu-Bilba, which is presently in the Birbhum district of West Bengal. Say that he was born in Orissa or South India. Kendu-Bilba is on the bank of the Ajaya river, and according to some sources, the deities of Radha Madhava that were worshipped by him appeared to him from the waters of the Ajaya river. Now, we'll find that this Dashavata Stotram, this is very famous throughout India today, and all over the world by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. Palaya Payo Dijale, which we sing one verse every day. So, Lakshman Sen, the king reigning, the king of Bengal, who lived in Navadvip, he came to, this poem was recited in his presence, and he wanted to meet who is there's someone in my kingdom who has made such a poem, it's so wonderful, I must meet him. You may have had that experience. You read something and you feel, oh, I wonder who is this person who's written this, and maybe So he inquired from his court Pandit, Govardhana Acharya, who has written this. So he was informed that this is written by Jayadeva, one poet named Jayadeva. And the king wanted to meet him, but Govardhan said, he won't meet you. He doesn't meet kings. So the king went in disguise to his house. He went to Jayadeva. And he could immediately understand that this is a very advanced spiritual personage. So the king was, he was also a great devotee, so he revealed that actually I'm the king in this land and I request you to come and live in my court and grace my court. So the King Lakshman saying he was disturbed that he'd gone there to try to bring Jayadeva to his court, but as a result, I understand that. Jayadeva, he said, no, I don't want to live in the royal palace. I'm going to go away and live in Puri. I don't want to be disturbed by all this. The king is coming to me and all this kind of stuff. So then the king became disturbed and thought, I wanted to bring him to my palace, but just the opposite is happening. He's going to leave my kingdom altogether. Because it was considered that if you have pious and powerful, if a king has powerful and pious brahmanas in his kingdom, it will bring all good fortune. So pious kings, they try to make an atmosphere in which the brahmanas would want to, please come and live in our kingdom, we'll give you all facilities. So then Lakshman Sen suggested that you can stay in the village of Champahati, which is within the area of Navadvip, still a little distance from Lakshman Sen's palace. He promised, if you come and live at Champahati, then I promise I'll never come to see you ever again, but you please come and live there. So Champahati, the original name of that village was Champakahatta. Champaka means this champa flower, which you don't get here, but it's very beautiful and very beautiful to see and very beautiful to smell also. And Hatta means bazaar. So this village got the name because there used to be a garden of champa trees, and the flowers were sold at this place. And also because one devotee, Dvijavanina, who was living at Champahata, which is within Navadvip Mandal, in Satya Yuga he was living, and he had a vision of Caitanya Mahaprabhu at that time. And Caitanya Mahaprabhu's form is golden, like a golden champa. It comes in different colors. So Jayadeva agreed to live there, and Lakshman Sen had a cottage built for him in Champahata. And while he was living there, Jayadeva had a vision of Sri Sri Radha Madhava, and then they combined together in the golden form of Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And Jayadeva was told by Mahaprabhu that I will appear here in Navadvip, then I will go to Puri and I will relish your Gita Govinda poetry there. So then he told him that you leave and go to Puri. So Jayadeva, when he knew that this was the future birthplace of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he was a little sorry to leave, but as it was the Lord's order, he went to Puri. He had been engaged as a poet to the king in Navadvip, and he was also engaged thus in Orissa. And it seems that he spent the rest of his days in this world in Puri, where he wrote the transcendental poem known as Gita Govinda. It is also known as Ashtapadi. Now in Puri there was a Brahmana who had no children, and he regularly visited the temple of Jagannath praying for a son. Eventually his wife bore a daughter, and they named her Padmavati. When she came to the marriageable age, the Brahmana brought her to Jagannath and said, married. And Jagannath himself spoke to the Brahmin and said, I have a very intimate and dear servant called Jayadeva. He has left home, he is living separate from family, he resolved never to marry. He's fully dedicated to worshipping me, writing about me, thinking about me, chanting my holy name. Give your daughter to him in marriage. So the Brahmin took his daughter to Jayadeva. Lord Jagannath's daughter, Jayadeva said, well, I took a vow, I'm not going to marry in this life. Brahmin said, well, it's Jagannath who told me, so, you have to do it. And he just left his daughter there and left. So Jayadeva didn't know what to do. He's just sitting there chanting Hare Krishna, and all of a sudden someone walks in and says, here's my daughter, marry her. So he told the girl, okay, where do you want to go? I'll take you wherever you want and drop you off, and that will be the end of this. So Padmavati started crying and said that it's Lord Jagannath's order. How can you refuse his order? My father has given me to you. I've accepted you in my mind as my husband. If you don't accept me, then I'll die right now on this spot. He was trapped. That's one way to get a husband. I've seen it happen in ISKCON too. So Jayadeva, what could he do? He accepted. All right. Stronger than mine. I have to follow his desire rather than my own desire. So Jayadeva established the worship of a Narayan, of a deity of Lord Narayana, and being inspired by the ecstasy of worshipping the Lord, Krishna Lila manifested in his heart and in his pen. And although such topics were not known in the world at all, such intimate topics of the love in separation of Radha and Krishna, he began writing them, which is an incomparable literature. Jayadeva himself, at the beginning of that Gita Govinda, writes that it's that for those who are desirous to relish remembrance of the pastimes of Lord Hari, that these sweet verses have been composed by Jayadeva Saraswati. Jayadeva, who's inspired by Saraswati, Shuddha Saraswati. So it's an incomparable literature, although it's not suitable reading except for devotees who are on a level of eligibility to enter into it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has commented on Gita Govinda that although some modern scholars reject it as a vulgar sex literature, which it might appear like that if one has a vulgar mind, if one's mind is not purified. He commented that the more sane of the non-devotees have not made any comment on Gita Govinda because that it has been relished by great personalities who by their behavior are clearly renounced from material attraction, remains a dilemma to them which they cannot begin to enter. Therefore they have intelligently avoided commenting at all on this literature. Actually, advanced in Krishna consciousness can relish its incomparable sweetness. And Jayadeva was writing about all the different loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna. As it was appearing in his mind, he transposed it in incomparably beautiful language, suitable for describing the Supreme Lord. So he was writing and writing, but there came a point in his mind where Krishna was begging Radharani to give him the dust of her lotus feet. That he was falling down at her feet to beg forgiveness from her. She'd become angry at him at his misbehavior. That you please forgive me and place your lotus feet on my head. So Jayadeva hesitated that no one can imagine such a thing, that Krishna is most exalted and worshipped by all, and everyone is begging from Krishna his mercy, and Krishna is begging mercy from Radharani that you place your feet on my head. And he couldn't write. He felt, I cannot write this. So at this point he stopped writing, and it was anyway around midday, time for him to go to the nearby Ganga for his bath, as was his daily midday practice. So he left to take bath, but shortly afterwards Padmavati saw him come back, and she asked him that, well, what happened? Why did you come back so soon? So Jayadeva said that I thought of something I have to write. I'm going to write it now before I forget it. So he went, sat down, and left again. And a short time later, he came back again. And now Padmavati said, what happened? You didn't take it again, you came back? You didn't take bath? Yes, I took bath. Well, how is that possible?
А как это moguće? Otišao si, vratio si se, opet si otišao. Kad si imao vremena kupati se?
Jayadeva said, I came back, I wrote something. You did? You yourself? Why are you asking me? So then Jayadeva went to see what it... And he saw that the very words that he hesitated to write had been written in his own handwriting. So then he understood that even though he was not prepared to write, Krishna was prepared to write it.
Iako on nije bio spreman napisati to, Krishna je bio spreman napisati to, Krishna je došao u takvom obliku
to write this very verse.
Da napiše taj stih.
Krishna wanted this to be revealed to the world, even though his devotee was hesitant to do it. And he congratulated Padmavati, you're very fortunate, you saw Krishna. So in Puri there's a story told like that. It's we have no empiric proof, but it's.
U Puri se priča ta priča, iako nemamo empiričkog dokaza.
That there was the daughter of a gardener who they were growing flowers, and she would daily sing Gita Govinda with great devotion. In fact, it was such great devotion that Jagannath himself would come to listen. So one day when the king of Orissa came for darshan of Jagannath, he saw that Jagannath was kind of like, his clothes looked all ruffled and a little dirty, and some leaves and thorns on them, and it's his responsibility to oversee the worship, ultimate supervisor. So he asked the pujaris, what's going on? Why Jagannath is looking so disheveled like this? So the priests they didn't know, and they were afraid now we're going to get punished by the king. But that night in a dream, Jagannath told the king that there's no fault on the part of the priests. That when I go to the garden, I go to the garden to listen to that girl singing, and at that time I get a little dirty. The next day the astonished king arranged for the girl to be brought to the temple on a palanquin. So gardeners' daughters don't get brought to anywhere on a palanquin. It's only for kings and vaishyas and maybe a guru or brahmana of very high caliber. So, but the king recognized that she's favored by Lord Jagannath, singing in her devotion. So he thought that rather than Jagannath leaving the temple and getting all dirty, we can make some arrangements. She can come daily and sing. And since that time, it's been a tradition that Devadasis, female singers, sing Gita Govinda in the temple for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. There's another story told of Jayadeva that once he had to repair the thatch on the roof of his house. That's generally done in the summer before the monsoon begins, so the roof is secure and the rain won't come in. So there were bundles of straw which are tied up, and he had to pick that, untie, pick up, bring on the roof, spread it out, secure it. He had to do this in the hot summer sun. So he was on the roof, and then he saw there's just a bundle of straw. Someone's passing it up, so he took the bundle of straw, fixed it, and he turned and again another bundle of straws. So he took it, and this way the work was done much more quickly. Instead of having to come down each time someone was passing the untied straw. He presumed it must be his wife. Came down, he saw no one's there. He finished the job quickly and came down and saw no one's there. So he went inside the house and saw his wife busy with some other work, and asked her, had she been helping with the giving the straw bundles? No. No, he didn't know. And anyway, then he went into his deity room, and he saw his deity Madhava, all his hands were covered with pieces of straw. And so he said, no. Madhav himself, he's a member of the family, he helps with the family. So there are several descriptions in Sri Caitanya Charitamrita how Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when living at Puri, would relish hearing Gita Govinda. Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Rai, they would sing to him Gita Govinda. One time Jayadeva, he had a desire to hold a festival for Radha Madhava, but he didn't collect money and he didn't have any money. So he thought he'd travel around a bit, and by speaking poetry, then people they like to give some donation, and he would use this for festival. So after collecting some funds, he was on his way back home when he was apprehended by robbers who stole his money, cut off his hands and legs and threw him in a well and left him to die. So Jayadeva, down in the well, started calling out the names of the Lord very loudly, thinking that now it's time for me to leave this body. So he was there for 3 days, and he was still loudly chanting the holy names. And the king, by chance, the king who was out on a hunting trip, came by, and hearing the sound of the holy names coming from the well, he investigated what was going on, and was aghast to see Jayadeva in this situation. So he had him taken out of the well and brought back to his palace. The queen personally took care of him, and he was soon restored to health. The king and the queen were very satisfied with the saintly character of Jayadeva, and very much appreciated his singing of Gita Govinda. They brought Padmavati, and they kept them in the court, and they both took initiation from Jayadeva and became Krishna conscious by his association. Then one day the very robbers who had assaulted Jayadeva, they came to the palace disguised as devotees. It was their scheme they'd heard the king and queen were devotees, so it was their scheme to get some easy money. He recognized them, but nevertheless he treated them as if they were actually devotees, gave them respect, arranged for them to be nicely treated. But they were afraid that, Jayadeva, he might recognize us, then we'll really be in trouble. And so they decided to leave quickly. And Jayadeva, he asked the king to give them a good donation and an escort, so that no one would steal the money from them on the way. After going some distance, they told the escorting soldiers, "You can go back now. However, there is a message which you should convey to the king on our behalf, that before we took up devotional life, we were employed in the service of one king, who, understanding the very bad character of this Jayadeva, that he poses as a devotee, but actually he's an extremely bad person, the king ordered us to have him killed. So we cut his hands and feet and threw him in a well. Somehow he has survived. But recognizing us, he was afraid that his bad character would be revealed. And this is why he wanted us to leave quickly and gave us a sum of money. At this point the earth opened up and swallowed those rascals, not being able to tolerate such miscarriage of justice. The soldiers, being naturally astonished, told him all that they had seen and heard. When the king asked Jayadeva, he revealed the whole incident. And the king asked, "Well, why did you treat them with respect and give them money and all these things?" Jayadeva said that it is not a devotee, or he does not seek revenge from those who have wronged him. He attempts to placate them by sweet behavior. However, by the will of the Lord, Swakarma phala bhukpuman, as Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, everyone receives the results of their activities. Padmavati became very close to the queen, who once revealed to her that she was afraid of this sahamarana. That means when a man dies, especially among Kshatriyas, this was prevalent, that the wife enters the funeral pyre and dies with him. And when the queen's brother died, she was very unhappy that her sister-in-law would have to die with her, with him. So when she told this to Padmavati said that as soon as the husband of a chaste wife dies, her will to live dies. Her life heirs go with him, and her entering the fire is only a matter of formality. So the queen thought, well, it's easy to say that, but she decided to test Padmavati. And some days later, she told Padmavati that, "I have very bad news. I hate to say, but your husband just suddenly died." And Padmavati actually died on the spot. And the queen was very upset, but what have I done here? And the king also, when he understood what had happened, became most remorseful. And they begged Jayadeva that you by the grace of Krishna, you can revive her. Which he did. He chanted Krishna Krishna into Padmavati's ear, and she revived as if she was just waking up from sleep. After this, the king, queen and everyone there simply offered obeisances at the feet of this simple couple. After this, Jayadeva, he expressed a desire to visit Vrindavan Dham, and he brought along with him the deities Radha Madhava, and he began to serve. He domiciled at a spot near Keshigat and served his deities there. And all the inhabitants of the Dham became most pleased to hear his singing of Sri Gita Govinda. And a merchant constructed an impressive temple for the deities. Then after living in Vrindavan for many years, he returned to his birthplace in Kendu Bilba. And each day he would make quite a long walk to go to the Ganga for taking bath. And but one day he wasn't able to go. Ganga Devi, who, like all other saintly persons, very much appreciated him, she came to him so that he could bathe in her transcendental waters. He, according to local people there, he left this world from Kendu Bilba, and a festival is celebrated there each year on the day commemorating his disappearance. However, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is of the opinion that actually he left this world from Puri, and others still say that he left this world from Vrindavan. Apparently his Radha Madhava deities at least stayed in Vrindavan and are presently being worshipped at a place near Jaipur, just on the outskirts of Jaipur. Now, previously, not here, but I spoke on Murari Gupta. And I'll give another little story now. I have spoken from Caitanya Mangal. That when Murari Gupta was newly in Navadvip, apart from being a physician, he was also somewhat of a guru. One day in Navadvip he was walking on the road, followed by his disciples, and they were discussing impersonalistic yoga shastras. At this time Nimai was just a boy, and he himself was, although a boy, was the head of his group and the champion in discussion of shastra. So one day he saw Murari Gupta walking down the road, and he followed along with his friends. They started imitating his movements and gestures. Seeing this, Murari just ignored him and went on talking about his yoga shastra. And then he started speaking to Vishvamba, Nimai, also about this. But Nimai and the boys accompanying him simply made fun of him. And eventually they riled Murari sufficiently that he became angry. He said, this is Jagannath Mishra's son. I had heard that he was a very good boy, but now I see this is quite untrue. I've heard I've heard people praising him, but what is this behavior?
True.
Then Nimai became angry.
Yeah.
And he said, when you take your meal today, I'll come and teach you something. Anyway, Murari didn't take it too seriously. He forgot all about it, and eventually came time for his meal. In the meantime, Nimai had gone home. He dressed himself very opulently, his hair in a different way so that he couldn't be recognized. And then he went to Murari Gupta's house and called out very loudly, Murari! And then Murari remembered what this boy Nimai had said. He said, "What are you doing?" And the boy said, "It's all right, don't worry, it's only me, just go on eating." So he continued eating, and the boy came slowly closer to him. And then he suddenly urinated on his plate. Filled the whole plate up with urine. "What are you doing?" You like yoga, impersonalism, you've given up bhakti. Now you give up all your karma and jnana. Worship Krishna. Taste the nectar of bhakti. You think you're very intelligent, but you have no intelligence to understand bhakti. Lord Sri Hari is the supremely merciful personality of Godhead. Lord Sri Hari is the supremely merciful personality of Godhead. All powerful. He's the Father of all living beings. The eternal Brahman which you are glorifying is manifested from Him. He is the treasure of the life of the gopis. Why not dedicate your life in His worship? And then he was gone. Murari he just couldn't see him anymore. Murari was wonderstruck and thought, this boy, he must be Hari himself. And so, forgetting all about his meal, and overwhelmed with emotion, he walked and he didn't see the path, but somehow or other in his emotional ecstasy, he didn't see the path or where he was going, but somehow he came to the house of Sachi and Jagannath, where Sachi and Jagannath were together holding Nimai, and from each side they were kissing him, but then they saw Murari Gupta, who he forgot about this apparent bad behavior of Nimai and just was entranced by seeing his beautiful face. And as the hairs of his body stood on end, tears flowed from his eyes. He again and again offered obeisances to his young child. And Nimai was just looking at him from his mother's lap, as if he didn't understand what's going on. And Sachi and Jagannath asked, what happened? Because they were used to people coming and complaining about Nimai. Did he do something very bad? You look like a demigod. Please bless our son. Did our boy offend you? Anyway, whatever happens in this world is destined to happen. But we request you to bless our son. That he may live long. And they bowed, Sachi and Jagannath, taking Murari's hand, bowed down before him. And happily Murari said that your son Vishvambar is the master of the masters of the demigods. You don't realize this now. In future you may realize that no one is more fortunate than you, because your son is the Supreme Lord Himself. And then Murari left and went to the house of Advaita Acharya. And falling at his feet, he revealed, or he said to Advaita, who himself knew very well, that I've seen something wonderful. I've realized that this Vishvamba, the son of Jagannath Mishra, is actually the most exalted person in the whole universe. Hearing this, Advaita Acharya roared, and with his bodily hairs standing on end, said, I will tell you the most secret of all secrets. This boy is indeed the Supreme Lord. He is the abode of the goddess of fortune. He tastes the transcendental ecstasy of divine love. The two of Murari Gupta and Advaita Acharya roared together in ecstasy. Overcome with bliss, they forgot everything about the external world. Now let us pray for the mercy of these great devotees, that we may someday become fortunate to be accepted as the servants of their servants. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Shri Jayadeva Gosvami Prabhu ki jai. Murari Gupta Prabhu ki jai. Hare